Today we're talking about creating a superhero brain.
Not just a brain or super brain.
But a superhero brain.
A superhero
Dun,
brain.
dun, 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 dun.
Right.
So this is so important because, again, this is really the governing force that's controlling a lot of what's going on with all of the cells in your body every single microsecond. So it's really of the utmost important. But how often do we talk about our brain? You know, usually we're talking about belly fat. We're talking about, you know, a thyroid issue, whatever the case may be. You know, we're all struggling with different things from time to time. Right, cellulite. But guess what? Your brain is the governing force that's controlling what your body is doing. Yeah. Right? That's why it's so important. So this event was mind-blowing. I mean, the caliber of speakers there, we had everybody on stage from Jack Canfield, who's the best-selling author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books and the Success Principle series, star of the hit movie The Secret.
Yes.
Another guy that was in The Secret was Bill Harris. He was there as well. Quincy Jones was there on stage. Wow. I mean, I just got chills that ran through my body. Again, just being able to sit there and to hear him, to learn from him, it just blew my mind. Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Daniel Amen, who's going to be coming on the show soon. We even got to hear and experience and learn from Shannon Lee, who's Bruce Lee's daughter. And she shared some of the inner workings and the writings from her father that, you know, you just wouldn't get to hear. And what, I mean, just profound experience.
Great access.
Yes. And so all of these individuals have this specific niche and specific thing that they bring to the table as far as how the inner workings of the brain go, you know, whether it's application, you know, physical actions you need to take to change the structure of your brain, or it's nutrition, or it's movement or meditation we talked about. So I've got a lot to share, and we're going to compact some of the best lessons here. But what I want to start with,
were our scout for this.
I'm the scout. So what I want to start with is something called neuroplasticity. All right, neuroplasticity. And many people have probably heard this term before, but what this really means, just to kind of summarize, is that this is the brain's ability to reorganize itself and form new neural connections throughout life. So this really speaks to the malleable, pliable flexibility of the brain to continue to grow and develop from your first day to your very last day. Your brain has this capacity, and many of us don't realize that. And we've got terms in our society like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You know, well, I guarantee you can.
Right.
All right. I guarantee you can. And this neuroplasticity allows the neurons, which are your nerve cells in your brain, to compensate even for injuries, for diseases, and basically to adjust, to create new highways. If one highway's blocked, your brain can grow a different one, you know, kind of go around the problem. It is that powerful.
Yeah. It's powerful that you said also for injury and disease. You don't make that connection.
Yeah.
Typically, I think we look at intellect and motor functions, things like that, but actual healing, disease.
Yeah, it's very important. It's very important to actively apply this as well. One of the speakers there also is Bo Eason, who was at one point the best safety in the NFL. And this was back in it was like the early 90s. And he was known as that guy everybody's kind of scared of. He flies around and just throws his whole body at people. And he was he was actually awarded this with, and I'm not very familiar with the acting and stage speaking, but he had this one-man show on Broadway for forever, and then just all of these accolades. And after his playing career was cut short, he needed to find something to, and as many people know, if you've seen the movie Concussion, for example, that there's a lot of neurodegeneration that happens, and it's accelerated via all of this contact. And Dr. Daniel Amen is one of the people who was a consultant on the movie, and he's seen in his patients 80% of the NFL players that he's scanned, their brains have some significant brain damage. And so by Bo proactively putting himself in a new environment, learning other things, and practicing that craft, he was able to rewire his brain, and his brain is incredibly healthy.
I love it.
All right, so this neuroplasticity is in response to new situations or changes in your environment. This is very important. We need exposure to both of these. And echoed in the words of Henry Ford, which I love this, anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. The greatest thing in life is to keep your mind young. All right, and that's from Henry Ford.
And that reminds me of a quote from Muhammad Ali, who just passed away as well.
Yeah, that's
About
and
the
just
50-year-old.
huge admiration and in that moment. But that quote, this is one of my favorite quotes, is the man who views the world at 50 the same way that he did at 20 has wasted 30 years of his life.
That's huge.
All right. But we tend to live the same year over and over and over again instead of understanding that each year is different and we can get better, instead of living the same thing over and over again.
Exactly.
So that leads me to one of the first lessons here of this experience, which was the power of immersion, right? And I really advocate, and this is something I'm very passionate about, is that we all, everybody listening, proactively get yourself around the environment that is conducive to the person that you want to be. You have to be in the environment, immerse yourself in it at least a few times a year, just complete immersion. And one of the most important experiences for changing the brain is this concept of immersion. And there are really three major ways to create a strong neural pathway in your brain. Number one is through repetition, all right, which we've talked about many times in the show. Number two is through an emotionally charged event. A very highly emotionally charged event can lay down myelination and a neural connection very strong, and it can help people or haunt people for many, many years of their life, just having one very emotionally charged event. The third way is through immersion. And immersion is defined as a complete involvement in some activity or interest. So complete and utter involvement, 120% of you.
Dive in.
And a great example is language learning. This is well known that one of the fastest way, if not the fastest way, is immersion into the culture. When you actually have to change and you have to learn it. So that, and also sports training camps, for example, when people are going to these camps, they're immersed in the culture and they're taking away tools immediately just from being around in that environment. And this particular superhero brain conference was a complete and total immersion in all facets of learning how to have a better brain, a superhero level brain.
Right. Your brain looks different from here.
Do you notice?
I did. Something's different about your brain.
So this is basically, it's being the metaphorical apple and dipping into that caramel, right? Right? You are bound to come out different. You're bound to come out changed and kind of coated in this newness, right?
You'll need a popsicle stick.
Or it can be like Gold Member. I don't know if you've seen Austin.
Yes.
Yeah, baby. Gold, baby. So this is critical that you get out of your business as usual box and you get yourself immersed in the environment that you strive to have as your own. And I just want to extend that to you because it is truly, truly remarkable in how powerful it is. All right. And this is one of those, I don't want you to continue struggling on your own or to fight the fight on your own. You don't have to do that. We all do have our own personal battles, but we need to come together and be in that environment because nothing will change your life faster. All right, so one of the big takeaways from the event, this was shared by the man of the hour himself, Jim Quick, who helped put the event together. Really good friend of mine, and he was on the show as well. Yes. We got to have him back on. There's so much more there. He's just super brilliant, accelerated learning expert, accelerated with speed reading, with retention, with recall, just mind-blowing stuff. But we'll put his first interview in the show notes for this episode. So head back to
the whole week with him.
Exactly. Right.
Right. Immerse ourselves.
Head back to themodelhealthshow.com and you can get access to that. So
that'd be good.
One of the big things is self-talk. All right. Self-talk actually changes your brain. Now, your brain is always making new connections and laying down new hardware, right? But you also need the software programs to run things as well. And Jim stated that your mind is always eavesdropping on your self-talk. Okay. Your mind is always eavesdropping on your self-talk. Your mind is a supercomputer, and your self-talk is the programs that it runs. So what is this self-talk? Well, self-talk is basically the things we say to ourselves that no one else can hear, right? And it can be incredibly affirmative voice, or it can be at the far end of the spectrum and one that is very cruel and destructive. But regardless, this is running your life. So when you're exposed or dealing with a really tough situation, your positive self-talk in a tough situation could be things like, you got this. I got this. This will only make me stronger. This will only make me stronger. And that's that voice in your head saying this as you're going through this tough thing. I got this. I got this. This can only make me stronger. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going, right? This is affirmative voice. Yeah. There's a gift in this somewhere, All right, your brain will be right there. That self-talk will be there to say that there's a gift in this tough, challenging struggle somewhere. Or something like, everything is going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Everything is going to be just fine.
All things work together for good.
All right, so that's some examples of a positive self-talk that's going to be running when tough situations come up. Negative talk in the same situation could be things like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Why are you so stupid? You can't do this. You were too fat, too weak, too ugly, to fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. And what that's going to inherently do, obviously, is to immediately put us in a place of disempowerment. And most of us would never in a million years talk to somebody that we love like that. Right. So why do we talk to ourselves like that? Why do we allow those programs to be running in our minds that are keeping us from achieving our greatness?
There's a few reasons for that.
It's so powerful to understand that even that voice in our heads, that self-talk, is governing and actually shaping our brains and shaping the way that we perceive reality, right? So this is of the utmost importance if you're going to have a superhero brain to retrain this self-talk. So the bottom line is, if you're going to change anything in your life, you've got to change the way you see it. And there's some science to back this up. So I came across a study. This was in 2013 from scientists in the Netherlands. And they watched women with anorexia walk through doorways in a laboratory. The women, they noticed, turned their shoulders and squeezed sideways even when they had plenty of room, because their mental perception of themselves was that they were bigger than what they were. Wow. And this isn't new knowledge, by the way. And I came across another study, and this was like back in 1911, and this was with neurologists Dr. Henry Head and Dr. Gordon Morgan, and they were exploring the brain-body action connection all the way back then. And they use an example where women at the time, it was very high status if they had these huge hats, right? So these were Edwardian hats, and they would be big hats with these huge, like ostrich feathers, right? Yeah. And what they noticed is that the women would duck as they came through the doorways, even if they didn't have their hats on. Women who habitually wore these hats, because they were their image of themselves had been so entrained to believe that they need to duck down, even when it's not there.
Absolutely.
All right.
And I certainly can concur with that, because one of the reasons that I wear my head wrap, my crown, is that it does help me stay in that positive state of mind, to hold my head high, to keep an upright posture. And I carry myself much differently and feel much differently when I'm in that space, whether I have it on or not.
Yes.
It's become a part of who I am, yeah.
So the question is, would the researchers notice if you were walking through a doorway? Well, if you were like Shaquille O'Neal.
When I get in my car.
Yeah, see,
I got to watch it when I get in my car.
Even if you don't have it on.
Yeah, how about that?
And you're probably, and this is the thing that they were tracking, because here's the bottom line. It can be empowering and it can be disempowering. Sure. But for you, this is an empowering thing.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is this: their mental self was wearing the hat, even though their physical self was not. Mm-hmm. All right, so your mental self is going to drive your actions in the world. So scientists are still trying to figure out how all of this works, because the bottom line is that your perception of yourself and your self-talk definitely dictates your behavior. Mm-hmm. So now I want to share with you guys 3 keys to changing your self-talk to better serve you. All right. So step one, and this is powerful because already there's change happening with every person who's hearing this. Step one is as simple as listening to what you're saying to yourself each day. All right, because for most of us, we're unconscious of it. We just hear it all the time in the background or even in the foreground, and we don't know that we can pay attention to it. Like, hey,
right,
who is that?
Right, what are y'all talking about in there? Don't make me come in there.
Step one is simply listening to what you're saying to yourself each day. Awareness trumps everything. Awareness trumps everything. So that's the first part.
Love that.
Next up is to change the language when you hear it. Mm-hmm. Okay, change the language when you hear it. When you're noticing, now you can change it. I want to say this really quickly, is to forgive yourself first. If you're in a bad way right now and struggling with this, where you know that you have this negative self-talk and you're doing something, you're like, you're so stupid, Lynn, or you're so stupid, Gordon. Think about Alf. Jumped in my head. Gordon Shumway, do you remember? Yeah. Yes. So, but anyway, so when you're trying to work on a project, or you're maybe late picking up your kids or something. You're just like, you're so stupid, Lynn. First thing when you catch that, forgive yourself. You have to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for that and say, Lynn, you don't deserve that.
There you go.
Okay? You don't deserve that.
What a graceful way to help.
It's not about lying to yourself. It's about being more kind and encouraging rather than abusing and crippling to yourself.
Yeah.
All right. This isn't just like some positive self-talk. Yeah. This right. is, I acknowledge that I messed up here, but be kind to yourself. Next up. So, and then again, when you notice that, you can change it. So it's like, you're so stupid, and you immediately change it. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't deserve to hear that. You are amazing. All right, you're amazing. Remember that. You just made a mistake. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. All right, so, and then the next thing here is to proactively use affirmations. So this isn't waiting around for the voice to happen. Yeah. It's you happening to the voice. So affirmations, what tends to come up for a lot of people, I know it does for me, is Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live. You're good enough, you're smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like you.
Yeah, they
As
do.
he's sitting in the mirror saying this. But it's not that. It's something, that can be a part of it where you're giving positive affirmations in the mirror. And there's clinically, it's proven to be beneficial for a lot of people. However, we're talking about something a little bit deeper, proactively, just some of the things I said earlier in a tough situation, like you got this.
Right.
There's a blessing in this. You've got so much potential. Or just especially during those times when you need it, just giving yourself that little affirmation, or proactively before you need it. Yeah. Right. So, and another big way that you can kind of imbue this into your cells is movement, along with the affirmation, makes it even stronger. And this is affirmed through the research of Dr. Wendy Suzuki. And she's speaking at an event that I'm going to be speaking at in September, which is really, really cool. So Great. Maybe we might get connected. Okay. But I mentioned her back on an episode, and this was episode 119. This was 15 ways exercise can make you stronger, younger, and more successful, which we'll put in the show notes. And we talked about her experience, and just how even movement impacts what's going on with your brain. All right. So these can be called incantations or affirmations plus action. All right. So it's saying those positive things about yourself, but imbuing some movement into it.
Love it.
All right. Now, to have a superhero brain, it has to be one that is supportive and one where the software programs keep you motivated and confident. That's part of having a superhero brain, is knowing how amazing you are and knowing how amazing your brain is. So another really enjoyable part of the event was learning about how to train your brain to make accurate neuro-associations. All right, so our brains are always making connections between events, environments, foods, all this stuff. So my friend Julia Roy talked about leveraging this to improve our productivity.
Oh.
Right? And who couldn't use a little bit more boost in our productivity?
Yes.
We get so distracted. We got so much stuff coming up, and it's coming at us on a daily basis, especially today. So what can we do? So she shared 3 specific tips. As far as work, she recommended creating work-only zones.
That's
all right?
So good.
Yes.
Yes.
So, and this could be whether you're at your office or whether you're at your home, especially for those at home, creating those work-only zones so that your brain is firing the right message when you go into that environment. All right. So what does that look like? Well, for me, it's understanding that when I'm at my desk, my amazing standing desk,
yes,
and getting my work done there, I'm not going to be there messing around on YouTube or, messing around on social media or anything like that. This is where I'm working at. If I want to do that stuff, I'll go over to the couch in my office or something like that. So it's, when you're in this space, this is what you're doing. Or also maybe you only do that work in that place. Whatever work it is at that desk.
Right.
Once you're outside of that room, you don't do any work there. You don't do any work when you're sitting around on the couch in your living room, where you're known to plant your booty and watch TV, right? So because you're going to have this draw, you're not going to have that strong neuroassociation. So that was number one, is to designate work-only zones. Number 2 is set the right soundtrack. All right, set the right soundtrack. So music is a very strong connector for memories and also neuroassociation, because there are songs that you hear that take you right back to that moment.
Oh, yeah.
And I see Jade over there. She used to be a DJ.
I did. That's where I started.
Down in the ATL.
That's right.
So she knows as well as everybody. You guys all know this, that there's certain songs that take you right back to specific moments. And it's a beautiful thing. And this also, I just want to give a little shout out to this. How many lyrics of songs do you know?
Oh, wow. Come on.
Thousands?
Name that tune.
You know, like how powerful is that?
Yeah.
And then we think we can't remember a few sentences or a quote. We absolutely can.
Passwords.
It's the motivation, and also understanding that melody and music is very powerful for entraining our brain. So there's certain soundtracks, and I've been doing this, even before hearing this from her. I was like, oh yeah, that's why I do that.
Right.
That I'll play that when I'm writing, a specific soundtrack. When I was working on Sleep Smarter, if I ever did play any music, it was this. And then there's other music that I'll use for the other work that I'm doing, whether it's working on something for the website or for the show. I'm doing research, so I've got different soundtracks that I actually play.
I love it.
All right, so set a soundtrack that entrains your brain to know that this is what's going on. We do this with my son with his bedtime.
Oh, good.
My son Braden, who's 4 now, ever since he was pre 1 year.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say, how people like, my son's 26 months old.
You're like pre.
But
it's pre-1.
It was, before he turned 1, we were using the same music that we play today. And 9 times out of 10, he's within 5 minutes, he's asleep.
I love it.
All right, so it's creating that neuro-association. Third thing, really quickly, is to give your devices a specific task. All right, this can be a game changer for you guys.
Yeah.
All right, so if your goal is to write a book, all right, your goal is to write a book, but you're feeling distracted. You keep on jumping around. You're not focused. You're not creating the results that you want. And you know that this is something you're really passionate about and you want to do this, you've got to set yourself up for success because there's so many distractions. So maybe your desktop is the only place that you do your writing for the book, and you block out access to the internet on that computer. And because it's easy to just be like, you know what, I'm having a hard time thinking, I'll just open up, watch a YouTube video real quick, or just go see what's happening on Instagram or Facebook or whatever the case is, right? So that access, again, creates that neuroassociation. Whereas if you know that this is where I'm writing, when you get there, your brain is like, let's write.
Let's get to it. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you've got your smartphone for one thing, your iPad for something else, and then you've got your desktop, This was some great advice and just got my wheels turning. So just wanted to share with you guys some of these important points that I picked up. All right, so let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to do the closing talk at the event.
Oh, cool.
And even when I was up there on stage, I was like, I get to do what I want to do because I'm the last person. So everybody got to go on a pretty amazing journey with me and talking about the brain and sleep, and how powerful sleep is in our overall brain function. And one of the things that I talked about, and I've mentioned this on the show before, especially being at an event with Jim Quick, where he's this memory expert and learning expert, our memory. So even right now, as you guys are hearing this information becomes a part of your brain. It gets converted to your short-term memory when you're sleeping. So tonight is when the magic really happens. Predominantly during REM sleep is where this memory processing happens. And thus, you can move from there to going to your long-term memory as well. But if you're not sleeping properly, or your REM sleep is messed up or disrupted, you're going to have a much harder time learning. And this is why also, if we get on a bender and we drink a little bit too much and we kind of don't remember everything that happened the next day, that's never happened to anybody before, though. This is because it's something called the REM rebound effect that's clinically proven via drinking alcohol, which makes you fall asleep faster, but it radically disturbs your REM sleep. So we're not able to process those close memories. That's crazy, right?
Right.
So a lot of people don't know why that happens. That's why it happens.
And unfortunately, those are times when, if it's in celebration, those are things you'd want to retain and capture.
But instead, you wake up with a tattoo on your face, right?
Or a monkey in your bathroom.
I have a butterfly on my face, right? Oh, yeah. So memory processing, that's really important. And also myelination. So this is creating that faster connection. So that it's like insulation over those new neuro-associations, nerve pathways that have been created so that they fire faster, that information is easier to recall, whether it's a motor function, like, hitting a golf ball, or whether it's something you want to remember.
The motor function.
That's one part I talked about, and, we had a great time. Also, I mentioned, I could not mention this because it's so important, the detoxification process, because the brain is absolutely phenomenal in so many different areas. And now we're realizing just how important it is to get sleep, because detoxification happens for your brain while you're sleeping. And this is run by your glymphatic system. It's a shout out to the glial cells that run it. But your glymphatic system is 10 times more active when you're sleeping than when you're awake. And the biggest thing right now with Alzheimer's is being reported is that it's an inability of the brain to detoxify itself. All right. So Alzheimer's is tied to that memory loss, that whole thing. So it's just this accumulation of metabolic waste in your brain, and it's just taking up space and not allowing for new pathways to be created. Scary stuff. So this is why it's so critical. Again, people are like, I can get by on, 4 hours of sleep or whatever the case may be. Getting by is one thing. Yeah. And I've got so much research to affirm how they're not getting by, but because we trick ourselves. We trick ourselves into believing that. And I've been guilty of this. Like, this is why I'm so good at this, probably. I've done it. I've done this stuff before.
Talking about you.
We, especially with the advent of Sleep Smarter, we talk about optimizing the sleep you are getting, not necessarily about sleeping more. It's not as much about the quantity, though that is important. It's about the quality of sleep that you're getting. So you can rock that 6 hours of sleep that you're getting and get optimal sleep cycles. But that's a whole other conversation we talked about many times in the show. And one of the things that I wanted to share with everybody that was probably new to 99.999% of people, pretty much everybody there, was eating good sleep nutrients. All right?
Okay.
Good sleep nutrients. And so I talked a little bit about the gut and sleep connection, the gut-brain connection, and how there's 400 times more melatonin located in your gut than in your brain, which we've talked about in the show. But a lot of people think that this experience is happening in our head, but it's largely dictated by what's going on in your belly, which, it's often called the second brain, your gut, because there's so much neurotissue there, all right? So we talked about that. We talked about some of the things to avoid damaging your gut microbiome, because Caltech researchers found that there are bacteria in your gut that communicate with the cells that create sleep-related hormones. All right, so we want to make sure we're taking care of those good guys in your belly. Yeah. Very, very important. And another thing that I talked about, so then, of course, I mentioned some of the good sleep nutrients and all that good stuff. So we talked about the blackout curtains. We talked about making sure we have the right neuro-association to our bedroom itself, so we don't do our work in our bed, for example. We also talked about how important it is to be in a cooler environment during sleep. Now, the brain especially likes to be cool when you're sleeping. Your brain does not like to be hot. As a matter of fact, there's a study that was conducted by the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine with insomniacs, and they found that they tend to have significantly warmer body temperature than normal right before bed. All right. And to combat this issue, they fitted the insomniacs in the study with these, quote, cooling caps. All right. And then tested their results. And it was shocking what happened. So with these cooling caps on, insomniacs took about 13 minutes to fall asleep compared to 16 minutes for the healthy control group. So they fell asleep faster. All right. The people with chronic sleep issues. And what's also interesting is that the patients diagnosed with insomnia ended up sleeping for 89% of the time they were in bed, which is the exact amount of the healthy control group. And the study demonstrated across all the different people that were tested, improved significantly to the degree that they were no longer, quote, insomniacs. It was based on their activity then. 75% of the people.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
More had improvement, but to the degree that they no longer have, simply by cooling off their brain, cooling off their head.
One factor can make that much of a difference.
So this is why it's important to cool the environment, but also our bed attire. So not dressing up like a lumberjack before we go to bed. And so that ideal range is between 62 and 68 degrees. But also it's really important for the sheets that we're using, the covers, those kind of things, because there are things that kind of insulate you and build up more heat. And this is common for a lot of stuff. And I know that that's the kind of stuff that I was using growing up when we didn't really think about it or have a choice. But there are certain sheets that can actually sleep cool, right? And this is what I'm actually using. And the company that I get my sheets from is called Ettitude, right? Ettitude, not attitude,
right.
Ettitude. So it's Ettitude, Ettitude. And this company is absolutely amazing to the degree that I contacted them and had a conversation. So these are just a few of the reasons that I love Ettitude so much. And everything that I do has a purpose. I'm not sleeping on these sheets for random reasons, because they actually do feel amazing and they sleep cool, because my body, I tend to run a little bit hot. Whereas my wife, she's from Kenya. And so she needs the heat, she loves the heat. But both of us maintain a great body temperature, but funny enough, sometimes, and I know other people as well, even people who tend to be cold at night can end up sweating and getting kind of gross. And she hasn't experienced that either, because sometimes she would get a little bit sweaty, even when it's cooler in the environment, So these sleep cool, they feel amazing, and they're made from great materials, no toxic, whatever, organic materials. And these are made properly from the beginning of the gathering of the materials to the manufacturing to the distribution. It's all done with integrity.
Nice.
And then we need more companies like that are doing things the right way, paying a fair wage and actually paying attention to the whole process and getting it to the consumer with care.
And consciousness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I use the bamboo Bondi sheet set, the gray. That's what we are rocking most of the time. So definitely head over, check them out. ettitude.com.au/model. So that's ettitude.com.au/model for 10% off. Now let's get on to the next point here. So another big thing that I covered with the relationship between sleep and the brain is talking about our devices, all right, and how this is intimately impacting our brain health. And so what's going on here? Well, bottom line, we know, and we've talked about this many times on the show, and this is highlighted in Sleep Smarter, that our tech devices are in fact disrupting our sleep quality to the degree. You have an iPhone as well, right? The latest iOS update, Apple has now built into the iPhones. If you push your screen up, your little scroll up where your toolbar is with your flashlight and your calculator right there, you can get to the camera right there. Right in the middle, there's a little button, a little tool, and it looks kind of like a sundial.
Nice.
And that is called night shift. And pushing that button immediately pulls out the most troublesome spectrum of light from your screens.
Good for them.
And this is clinically proven to lower your cortisol and help your melatonin to increase naturally, simply doing that, not being exposed to that blue spectrum of light. The best thing is giving yourself a screen curfew, not being on it. But these are really important hacks that can be valuable along the way. And so also you can go to your phone settings overall on the brightness and display, and you can set the timer on your phone for it to do it automatically.
Oh, neat. Okay.
So bottom line is, if Apple's doing it, this is some serious business, all right? Because we're talking about
it's relevant,
multi-billion-dollar change that they brought to the world, and just it's so influential in culture. But they're paying attention to the fact that in a few years, it's going to become common knowledge that people possibly could even end up with lawsuits or something. Like, this is wrecking my sleep and whatever.
It's costing me so much, and that's a key thing you mentioned, that it's part of the influence and influencers. And this is why this has been so important that you share this message to influence the change that needs to happen in this direction. And Apple is doing the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you and Apple. Look at that.
Me and Apple. I guess I'm that caramel apple that we talked about earlier. Yeah.
Dipped, fully immersed.
See how it comes full circle. Caramel apple. So I'll be that and proud of it. But another really important part of this process, especially with maintaining and operating a superhero brain, we have to be able to utilize our brain the way that we want to, and to impress upon our reality our power instead of it disempowering us. And this is what's happening with our devices. Little do we know, because of what's going on with our brain chemistry. And so there's this really interesting compound that we've talked about before called dopamine that was once thought to be about satisfaction, this neurotransmitter, but it's really about seeking. And so as we are seeking, this is through human evolution, it's driven us to look for things, to expand, to want to grow, to go and search and explore,
right,
which has made us who we are today. Couple that with, if you just keep seeking forever and not find anything, you'll go insane.
Sure.
So it's built in that when we find something, we get a little opioid hit, all right, a little like a slow drip of morphine from our opioid system, that when we seek and find something, thanks to dopamine, we find it, and then we get that opioid hit. And that creates this drive for us to want to keep doing it.
That's right.
The internet is absolutely perfect for dopamine and this opioid system, because there's infinite amount of information to seek. You can seek forever, right? On and on and on.
Yes.
And every time, the crazy thing is too, you Google it, you will find it. Or you scroll, you'll find it. You seek, you find. You seek, you find. And you set up this very addictive pattern. Right. And you start to have a very disempowered brain that's obsessed with being on the internet or with technology. And to take back control of our brain, we have to be aware of this, because awareness really trumps everything. And this is what it's really about. So just that one thing, being aware that we are addicted and our brain is set up to be, it's hardwired to be addicted to our technology. You can break that pattern and start to intercept it, start to add in things that are more conducive to you having a healthy brain. So engaging in maybe some brain games, maybe engaging in some stimulating conversations, maybe doing some great things for your brain. Your brain actually really loves sex. So maybe you can do a little bit of that. Something else, especially in the evening, to supplant that drive to want to be on our phone and have that be the last thing we do before we go to bed. We've got to break that pattern because our use of technology is only going to grow, but we've got to have technology-free zones in our life. All right. We've got to set up parameters so that our sleep is sacred and this doesn't come in this particular area of my day, this particular time, or this part of my house. I think it would be really conducive for that. So this is just one of the other things that I talked about during that talk. And again, I had the opportunity to close out the entire event, which was phenomenal.
And everybody left there and went to bed.
Who knows? And I even read a little bit of my son's one of his favorite books, and it's titled Even Superhero Sleep. So everybody really enjoyed that. But so let's move on. Let's talk about some of the other components of having a superhero brain. One of the big things, and again, we could do an entire show about this, and we will, but it's the nutrition, obviously. Your brain is mostly fat and water. All right. So obviously dietary fats are very important. Hydration is very important. These are basic things that help you to have a superhero brain. If you're dehydrated, even 1%, that can be enough to damage your DNA, right, of your normal hydration level. And many people are operating below their normal hydration level all the time and wondering why they have all these different issues. And so hydration is critical, and I always recommend, and I even heard it just yesterday. I was at the gym, and this was like, there were two women who were, maybe they're in their 60s, and they were having a conversation. One of them was kind of coaching the other one, and she was like, the water is the key, and she said the exact words that I share. And I know some of the trainers up there at the gym listen to my show, so I don't know if she got it directly from there, but this is what she said, and this is what I recommend. Take your body weight, divide it in half. That number that you get, that's the amount of ounces of water you need to drink every single day as a minimum. All right. So if you weigh 150 pounds, 75 ounces would be your minimum. If you're more active, if you're, studying a lot, anything that's going to use even brain power, if you're sweating, going to the sauna, if you're even, eating meals that tend to have less water to them, drier foods, all of these things are going to require even more water, but that has to be your bare minimum. You hit that, you're going to be winning.
Nice.
All right. So the healthy fats, especially omega-3s, and this was Dr. Daniel Amen was talking about this specifically, and just kind of diving in on why those are so important. Great sources would be things like walnuts, fatty fish. Matter of fact, walnuts, again, the doctrine of signatures, they look like a brain. All right. So it's a good source of omega-3s, but plus they have these plant sterols that can help to break apart plaque in your brain. All right. So they build up. Yeah. So another really important brain nutrient or compound or spice even is curry. Funny enough, curry is wonderful for building your superhero brain. All of its anti-inflammatory properties and the antioxidant contained within curry with turmeric is curcumin. And curcumin actually has this very unique ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. And this is a very sacred place to be able to do that. And it's because your body knows that it's neuroprotective. And turmeric has been used for thousands upon thousands of years. And so turmeric and curry, these are both, turmeric especially has been clinically proven and tested over and over again to have anti-angiogenesis properties. So helping to defeat cancer cells, anti-inflammatory properties, anti-aging properties as well. So it's a really, really wonderful food, especially for your brain. One other one I'll share with you guys is blueberries. So blueberries have an abundance of different antioxidants, and it's a lower glycemic fruit, which fruits are pretty amazing for our health, but we want to be on the lower glycemic end because some of the higher glycemic fruits can cause some disruption with our blood sugar levels. But blueberries are in that category that are really, really great. So the phytonutrients in there, the antioxidants, have been found to be linked with things like improvement in learning, improvement in memory, and also helps to protect against neurodegenerative oxidative stress. All right, so nutrition is key. And again, Dr. Daniel Amen did a talk on this amongst other things, but This is part of the strategy, as you guys know, of having a superhero brain.
Yeah.
And so one final area that I want to share today with regards to having a superhero brain and some things that I took away from the conference, because every one of these topics could have a whole show dedicated to it. But, we want to get this overarching understanding and put some attention to these small things for the sake of showing our brain a lot more love.
Yeah.
All right. Getting that heart-brain connection happening.
Heart, brain, gut.
The whole shebang.
Shebang.
It's all connected. It's all connected. But your brain, we've absolutely got to share more attention specifically for our brain health. Because how often do we think about it? And when you're thinking, guess what's thinking?
Right.
Your brain. So again, we're going to put some more attention on this, definitely throughout this year of improving our brain health. And couldn't be better than having Dr. Daniel Amen to come on the show and to share his insights. But another critical component of having a superhero brain is to keep learning.
Yeah.
It's to keep learning. Keeping your mind young via learning could not be highlighted more than in the talk that we all got to experience there at the event with Quincy Jones. And if you don't know who Quincy Jones is, what?
Right.
Quincy Jones is one of the people behind Michael Jackson's Thriller, behind Ray Charles, behind you name it. We Are the World, and just so many iconic songs and artists over the years that it doesn't even make any sense. And then iconic films as well. A lot of people don't know that was a big part of his life as well. Movies like The Color Purple, for example, and just winning so many different awards in music and in film. And
across the spectrum, just a genius in contribution. We're talking music, television, film, magazine, print.
Yep.
Of course, he's a entertainment company executive, but also a humanitarian, just multi-talented, but aware and conscious. It's powerful.
Can you imagine all of the wisdom that came out with every word?
Right.
Yeah, man.
I bet you.
Every sentence was like, yeah, man.
Yeah.
He's so cool and so down to earth. And again, that wisdom that was just pouring out. He also knows 26 different languages.
Get out of here.
Right? And you would understand, like, he's literally lived in these different countries. He would go with the intention of staying for a week or two before music and end up staying for a year or two or more.
And immersed.
And he's so interested. He wants to connect with people. That's what makes him so passionate about learning. This is one of the secrets, is your interests. When you're interested in learning, you will learn that much faster.
That's right.
And as he was talking, he kept citing all of these different books that he's read, even more recently, from Malcolm Gladwell's work, just so many different things that he kept on throwing out. And I'm like writing down, just anything that he's doing, that he's involved with, that has brought value to his life. These are things we want to pay attention to.
Yeah, you do.
Because a lot of times we all have access to these things, to these books, to these conversations. So here's some of the things I took away. Be an avid reader. There's something about reading a real book that activates genius. It's because our brains can actually create the movie that goes along with it. So there's kind of this whole brain learning that happens with reading books. And you've heard the statement before, leaders are readers.
Readers are leaders.
Readers are leaders, leaders are readers. And it couldn't be more true. It's one of the consistent things I've seen with some of the most successful people I've had the opportunity to be around, to learn from. 9 out of 10 of them are pretty avid readers. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Another thing to keep learning is to create things as well.
I love that.
Be a creator as well. That process of creating, you're actually learning as you're doing it. And you're giving your gift and you're giving parts of your brain the ability to express themselves. And it's that whole idea of that if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
So create things. Whether it's you start to do, puzzles, or, you're getting into painting or creating clothes, creating music, creating podcasts, creating books, whatever the case might be for you, whatever lights your fire or whatever you just want to try. Just try things.
Yeah.
It's very, very important. Another thing that I really picked up from him in that conversation, and also to keep learning, is to strive to always be better and to be a better person. as you mentioned, his humanitarian efforts and underlying, the last question somebody asked him, because we also got to do like a Q&A at the end. She asked, what made it so successful for you? What made you so successful in helping all of these different artists, from Michael Jackson to Stevie Wonder, like you name it. Yeah. What made you so successful in it? And he said, love, baby. Love, man. Love and respect. Love and respect are the two keys. And so he shared that. But when he said it, you actually got it. You knew that he meant it. It was love and respect. Yeah. Those two things that we can cultivate right now. We don't have to wait. In creating better relationships and becoming a better person, expressing more love and more respect. Because this funny thing is that it's reciprocated, especially when love doesn't appear to have a presence. You bring it to it.
You do, yeah.
You bring the love to it. You bring the respect to it. It's one of those things we've seen with great leaders across the years. Even when it doesn't appear to be present, the respect nor the love.
That's right.
But also, especially when you have that present, you want to be somebody who magnifies that.
That's right. You want to be the gift that you bring to any occasion or party. You be the gift that you bring.
Love it. Absolutely love it. You be the gift. And one of the lessons that he shared from one of his mentors is this. He said that your music can never be less or more than you are as a human being.
At any given moment.
So it's, again, cultivating and making sure that you are the best person possible. And that's going to be reflected in the art that you create and the work that you do, because it can never be greater or less than the person that you are, who you are as a human being. So it was amazing. And there's one other small thing I'm going to throw in here for you guys. And this was highlighted in the talk given by Jack Canfield. All right. So again, Jack Canfield, star of the hit movie The Secret. He sold literally more books, I think, than anybody in history, especially like a specific person. Him and his partner, Mark Victor Hansen. I think they've sold like 500 million copies from this Chicken Soup for the Soul books.
Amazing.
What?
Right.
What? Who?
Right.
Doesn't even make sense. It's absolutely amazing. But he shared that it's really important for us to take off our mental limitations. It's really important to take off our mental limitations in order for us to have a truly superhero brain. Because he's coming from a situation where he had an abusive childhood. And as he grew into adulthood and they made this decision to start this kind of book of short stories, they were rejected 144 times from publishers.
See.
I didn't even know there was that many publishers.
Right.
Right? Can you imagine?
They went to a couple twice.
500 million copies sold. What if he stopped after 100 rejections?
Right. It wouldn't. Right.
That's so powerful.
We have to be that determined in what we believe in and what's right about it for us.
Yes.
We have to be so determined in that we move past any cynicism or criticisms or rejections to press on through until you can grasp it.
Yes.
Because whether it becomes 500 million or not, you have to grasp it for that to be completed for you in your life.
Absolutely.
It has to be something that you can hold and make tangible to say, I took this dream, this hope, this desire to something that I could actually hold, embrace, and add to me.
If we could get that, and actually participate in that, it would change our life, just in an instant. And to hear a story like that, 144 rejections, and from there, it wasn't easy going, and him and his partner set these audacious goals to the publisher, like, we're going to sell this whatever. And they were just like, he literally he belly laughed at him. It was like, that's totally ridiculous. Then he ended up, not too long in the future, writing him the first $1 million check that he's ever written, this particular publisher. And, it took them 14 months before they hit the bestseller list, the New York Times bestseller list. But then they stayed there for like, a couple of years or something crazy. But all along the way, when they even facing that challenge, he said this, is that use this equation, E plus R equals O. And this is event plus response equals your outcome. Okay.
Yep.
Event plus your response equals the outcome. And you always get to choose your response. And we have to become more empowered to do so. All right. So the event was rejected 143 times.
Amazing.
We'll just say, oh, maybe it was the 145th. So rejected 144 times.
Mm-hmm.
The response is, we've got this. We're gonna see such and such next week, publisher. We're gonna execute on this next one. That's the response. The outcome, book deal.
Yeah.
Finally,
Mm-hmm.
we can add the finally in there, thus leading to everything else.
Right.
You know?
And that was just the distribution of.
Yeah.
Because the value was in, we poured our hearts into this book.
Yeah.
And it had to reach people because that's what it was designed for. Just like that review we got about the love going into our show. You know, that's what's designed. That's what we're putting in here purposefully.
Yes.
How it gets distributed, then those details will get worked out. 144, 155, whatever the case is. But it was, in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill added a point that an egg is the beginning of a bird, and that a seed is the beginning of an oak. That within that contains what has to become physically manifested.
Right.
You know, and our dreams are the seeds of our reality.
We're the same way. You know, is our potential is already there. You know, just like there's a whole oak tree inside of that tiny acorn. There's a whole apple tree inside that tiny seed within that apple.
Right.
And within that, generations of other ones.
Yeah. Yes.
All contained within there. You know, we are the same way. But what's important about, this is what the superhero brain is all about. What's important is being in the right conditions, right? That seed needs the right conditions in order to blossom, in order to flourish, right? So if you got this oak tree, this acorn, and you're like, I'm just going to go ahead and try and grow it in some beer. I'm going to just give me a cup of beer and some gravel, and I'll put it here, you know? So highlighting potential drinking problem, all right? So if we're immersed in that environment, then obviously it's not going to grow. But once you have the right conditions, you put yourself in the right conditions, because we're not just products of our environment, we're creators of our environment. You can get yourself in the right conditions for you to blossom, and for all those dormant, latent capacities that you have, those talents that are there, they can actually show themselves, but they need the right conditions to do so.
Back to the equation, response.
Yeah.
Conditions can then in turn be considered response. Exactly. What conditions will you create to respond to this event for the optimal outcome?
Exactly. Love it. Love it. Because again, just to go back on a probably negative outcome of this equation, event, 25th rejection, response, this isn't going to work for us. The outcome is they never see any of that happen. You know, he might be, working at a purse factory or something. I just said that because your purse is over there. But, and not that would be a bad life. Thank
you for those who made the purse.
Yeah.
I love my purse.
So
it's my everyday
But
purse.
this is not what he intended to do and the impact that he's had on the world.
The purse would not be chicken soup for the soul.
Yeah.
And those are.
You could put some chicken soup in the purse.
Yeah. How about the book?
In a can. Okay. All
Let's just keep it dry.
So another thing that he said is that people tend to fight for their limitations.
We want them.
We tend to fight for our limitations. So, when we have something that is seen culturally and especially individually as a limitation, we tend to really hold on and embrace this. And I've seen this clinically as well over the years. And, when somebody has a particular health issue or a learning challenge, like dyslexia, it makes it extremely difficult, especially the way that our school system is set up now, learning for a lot of kids, and they struggle and they're led to believe that there's something wrong with them. Especially now there's different approaches and there's different monitoring, but especially, a couple of decades ago, it's like, oh, you're not going to make it. You'll never amount to anything. Yeah. And not understanding that their brains are just thinking differently. And many times dyslexic children are some of the most genius. And then there's storied people but then will buy into it. Yeah. Because just think of the millions of people who bought into it and really, oh, I'm dyslexic, I can't do it. Or, I have, it's in my family, no diabetes. It's just, and so we'll just buy into it and give that excuse. That's why I'm ordering this pizza. Right. What do you think? There's nothing I can do about it. And it's my diabetes, and they own it. Mm-hmm. It's a difference between taking responsibility and owning something and defining yourself as that thing. I am a diabetic. Mm-hmm. No, you have the diabetic condition. What are you going to do to improve your life? Right. All right. So we tend to fight for our limitations. And then you look at great people who have this dyslexic diagnosis. Sir Richard Branson, okay? The billionaire, Sir Richard Branson, Steven Spielberg, and the great Muhammad Ali. Wow. All champions, all overcame tremendous obstacles to be a part of our reality, the history books, a part of our lives.
Part of our influence.
But they could have fought for their limitations just as easily as the next person. Don't do that, all right? Mm-hmm. You are a superhero. Yeah. And this is part of developing that superhero brain. So it's important to take responsibility, but then to take responsibility for what you can do about it. And what if it was a gift? What if they were given the gift of dyslexia? What if you were given the gift of a degenerative spinal condition, as I was?
It was.
I wouldn't be here today with you guys.
Not in this way.
And I was fighting for my limitation. I had all the excuses in the book, all of them. It wasn't until I took responsibility for my decisions and how can I make this better? What can I do to become a better person? Because that was underlying all of it. And it led to some amazing revelations and transforming my life. So one last thing that he mentioned was that we tend to look at the problem the same way all of the time. Look at the problem differently. All right, look at the problem differently. And here's a couple of examples that I'm going to share with you guys from my own experience on how you can look at a problem differently. And this is going back to that Einstein quote, is that you can't solve a problem from the same level of thinking that created the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how can you look at the problem differently? You can do something that I call a location shift. All right, you can actually zoom out, look at the problem, zoom out and look at it from a meta perspective, from a higher perspective, and look at how big it really is in a different perspective. Nice. Okay? So if you see your problem that you're struggling with right now, and then you just zoom out from the perspective of looking at your city, it's like, how big is your problem now? Right. With all these millions of people around? It starts to lose its severity, and you zoom out to look at the entire planet from outer space. How big is your problem? Yeah. It doesn't really exist. And that's not to take away from the fact that you are dealing with something. It's just perspective, because when we're so in it, it becomes our entire world and universe. When there's so much more, and you're part of that bigger thing, not that problem. So zoom out. So that's using a location shift. And also you can zoom in and change your perspective, look at it differently by looking at the minute details that you might have missed. Okay, so changing perspective, zooming out and zooming in.
That's great.
Another way to look at your problem differently is to use a time shift. So what that looks like is, so I have this problem. We'll just use an example. What's a problem that people commonly have?
They are tired.
Okay.
Or agitated.
Yeah, let's use the tired. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm experiencing this problem. I have this chronic fatigue, and I'm tired all the time, and my work is struggling, my relationships are struggling because of it. What can I do about it? It's just so hard. There's nothing I can do. And we're looking at this problem the same way. Nothing's changing.
Right.
But you know that there's hope. There's this, because it's driving you to even get up in the morning, that things are going to get better. We'll just say in 10 years, it is radically better, right? You are, like, your whole reality is different, and you can't believe that I was so low energy back then.
Yeah. So
with a time shift, you look at your life now from that person in 10 years. How would they handle it? Mm-hmm. You know, what would the 10-year older version of myself do in this situation? The more evolved and wise and experienced version of myself. Yeah. All right. So use a time shift. And also you can zoom in and out as well with the time shift and look at the problem from a timeline. Okay. So you see the problem right now, you zoom out and look at the timeline. Mm-hmm. The things that led up to it, you could see back in the past.
Sure.
And the things that the solution here in the future, then just trace steps back. Like, what are the steps that got to the solution?
Right.
Okay, so these are just some...
I like that.
These are just some things that change perspective.
What I like about that also is by having a timeline, you can also see how you've overcome things before.
Yeah.
Or how you face challenges before. Yeah. Because if you've lived a little, my grandmother would say, keep living. If there was something that I didn't have the answers to, you definitely can get some perspective by seeing how far you've already come. Yeah. And you've talked about that many times by taking a look at what you've accomplished.
Isn't it amazing how our brains can do that?
Yeah.
But are we accessing that? We're tending to look at the problem the same way. Just change the way you're looking at the problem.
Well, yeah, with a superhero brain, I most certainly will.
Exactly. One final way that you can do this to look at the problem differently is to use something I call use a character shift. All right. So instead of you being your character, you ask the question,
what would Shawn do?
What would blank do? Whoever the person is.
Shawn Stevenson do.
What would blank do in this situation? You know, you're faced with a challenge, you're faced with an obstacle, you're faced with a decision. What would fill in the blank do in this situation? And this could be a great leader in the field, in your field, someone you admire, someone you aspire to live like. What would they do in this situation? What kind of decision would Napoleon Hill make, who you mentioned earlier? Yep. Or if you're really into politics that come out of nowhere, what would Trump say? Or what would Trump do in this situation?
What would he say, Shawn?
This problem is small potatoes. It's going to be huge. We're going to make a big difference. It's going to be amazing. So you could tap into that, whoever it is that you're idolizing, you know, or if it's, you know, we mentioned earlier Muhammad Ali. You know, what would he do in this adverse situation? Would he give up? Michael Jordan, if you're into sports and basketball, Peyton Manning, Oprah. What would Oprah do? Her life is a great story for all of us to really learn from. Tremendous adversity. Yeah. And by the way, she cited Quincy Jones as being the person who, quote, discovered her. See. You know, and absolutely amazing story. You know, but what would she do in this situation if you can character shift and see the problem from a different character perspective? And even in maybe a spiritual context, if you're dealing with a spiritual struggle, you know, feeling cut adrift, feeling like you don't know what your purpose is, feeling there's some disconnection, feeling that there's maybe a big challenge in your life and you need guidance. And you ask, you know, what would fill in the blank do for you with that, whatever your spiritual alliance is, your spiritual practice, whether it's Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle or you know, any of these great spiritual teachers, you know, to just ask that question and to see through their eyes, seeing your problem. Yeah. And this is all just a piece of the value and the information that was shared at the event. And I'm honored and humbled that I got to be a part of it.
Amazing.
And to really support having superhero brains because we need you. We need you to be at your best. And the world needs you overall. So this is time to take action. And the key is to take action and get yourself around empowering information like this on a regular basis.
That's right.
Again, that's what's so important. And luckily, fortunately, I just got an email last night that they're going to make the entire event available for a replay. Nice. And so you can go to superherobrain.com/model health and you can get access to the replay. So that's superherobrain.com/MODELHEALTH, all one word put together. All right. So superherobrain.com/model health, and you can get access to all of the speakers.
So cool.
All right. So definitely take advantage of that because it's a really game-changing experience. And I just want to give a gentle reminder that there's genius within you. There's genius within all of us. And activating your superhero brain is going to be a big key to you activating your genius. And there's a great quote from Arthur Schopenhauer that says, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target that no one else can see."
Ooh.
And I just want to leave you guys with that. All right. So take action.
Ooh.
Go to superherobrain.com/model health to access the replay of the event and stay tuned because we've got some amazing shows lined up for you guys. I'm so excited to be able to share what's coming up. These amazing guests, amazing show topics. So stay tuned. Much, much more to come. Have an amazing day, and I'll talk with you soon.